The history of Spanish in about 6 minutes. Chapter 1. Before the Romans, or antipasta. Though Spanish is a Romance language, evolved from Latin, its history begins before the Romans ever set foot on the Iberian Peninsula. Back in the 2nd century BC, the peninsula had several civilizations and languages: Iberian, Basque, Celto-Iberian, Tartessian, and Galician. Though not all of these civilizations lasted, many words remain today. From the Celts, we probably got great words for beer and shed, while the Basque language brought us cod and top hat and drizzle, which wasn't quite as welcome. And if all these civilizations weren't enough, then the Phoenicians and Carthaginians turned up with their own languages, found in places like Gadir and Malacca, now known as Cadiz and Malaga, followed by the Greeks from the east with great words like poem and history, which were certainly not a problem, plus words like hysteria, which were. But the main influence of Greek on the language didn't come till later, via Latin and the Romans. The history of Spanish in about 6 minutes. Chapter 2. Latin gets everywhere. Or don't be vulgar with me. There are two main types of Latin: classical, used in writing, politics and poetry, and vulgar, which was mainly spoken. Spanish comes from vulgar Latin. We get casa from hut, not the classical for house, but more on that mañana, which is from maneana, meaning at the early hour, and not from the Latin cras, meaning tomorrow. As their empire expanded, the Romans arrived at the peninsula around 200 BC, and after a couple of hundred years of war, conquered it. Latin was around for centuries, giving us most of the Spanish lexicon. Even siesta comes from Latin for 6th hour, the hottest time of the day. But remnants of the old indigenous languages still survived, mixing with Latin as it evolved. From the 7th century, the varieties of Latin spoken on the peninsula were gradually becoming very different from that spoken in other areas. But we have to wait until 1492 to see the first grammar of a Romance language published, written by humanist Antonio de Nebrija. The history of Spanish in about 6 minutes. Chapter 3. Germanic, Visigoth and Arabic influences, or do you prefer your Goths, Visi or still? In the 5th century, several Germanic groups invaded the peninsula, before being chased away by another group who stayed for 300 years, but didn't influence the culture and the language much, as they stuck to Roman customs. But they did leave words, mainly to do with war, and popularized many suffixes, ad, ed, id, and oth that are found on Spanish surnames. Around the 8th century, a Muslim army from North Africa landed and conquered the Visigoths, settling in for centuries. Their impact on the Spanish lexicon was enormous. In the kitchen alone, they gave us sugar, oil, noodles, watermelon, and alcohol. And for afters, dish up around 4,000 more words, many beginning with the Arabic article a or al as a prefix, like al and kul, the classic Arabic name for alcohol. The Iberian Peninsula didn't just absorb other languages, it also spread the words. When the Sephardic Jews were expelled in 1492, they took their Spanish language to places like Turkey, the Balkans, and Greece, where different varieties of Judeo-Spanish are still spoken today, which is more than you can say for Gothic. The history of Spanish in about 6 minutes. Chapter 4. Spanish and other Romance languages, or Romance is all about give and take. The Romance language of French influenced Spanish in waves. In the 10th century, pilgrimage across the mountains known as the French Way brought friars, monks, and priests, and jokes about a friar, a monk, and a priest walking into a tasca. Don Quixote was the poster boy for the golden age of Spanish literature, and while new words from France were appearing like a skirting board and napkin, this was a time when Spanish influenced the rest of Europe. The biggest wave of French influence broke in the 18th century with the arrival of the smartly dressed Bourbon dynasty, with their dapper jacket, snazzy trousers, and loads of money. They really were the elite. And during the reign of the Bourbon king Philip V, there was built the Real Academia Española, committed to standardizing the language, publishing dictionaries, and keeping an eye on Spanish wherever it was spoken. Other Romance languages also made their mark. The Catalans gave us paper and paella. Galicians brought homesickness and a rush. Italians brought the casino and courting. Because Romance gets everywhere. The history of Spanish in about 6 minutes. Chapter 5. Spanish and the languages of the Empire. Or The Empire Strikes Tobacco. Christopher Columbus arrived on an island in the West Indies and imaginatively named it La Española. This was the first contact between Spanish language and more than 2,000 languages of the indigenous Americans. As colonization grew and Bourbon reforms enforced the use of Spanish, these 2,000 indigenous languages shrunk to around 700. The Spanish language at the same time grew richer. Languages like Nahuatl give tomatoes and chocolate. From Arawak, we get guava. So today, you can eat chocolate and guava while experiencing altitude sickness from Quechua. The Real Academia Española focused on standardizing Spanish as spoken in Spain, but nowadays there are 23 academies across the world that work together to promote alternate, equally valid forms of Spanish. Spanish influence reaches across the globe, from America to Equatorial Guinea, where Spanish is an official language, while in Tagalog, a language of the Philippines, the days of the week sound very familiar to Spanish speakers, and Creole languages like Chabacano are also derived from Spanish. Chabacano itself roughly means vulgar, which takes us right back to those Romans. The history of Spanish in about 6 minutes. Chapter 6. Spanish and English, or Hasta la vista, alligator. Though more people speak Spanish or Mandarin as a first language, English is the most popular second language, so it's become a lingua franca, which is, ironically, Italian. Spanish regularly borrows English words, so it is okay to post online about football while listening to the blues, unless you're meant to be doing something else. Just as Latin evolved based on geography, Spanish has also branched out. Llanito Spanish of Gibraltar is so influenced by English they have Saltipina and Juba, and several groups in the US speak Spanglish, a mixture of the two languages. Hasta la vista, baby! In fact, the influence of English has even prompted Spanish to develop words that resemble English ones but aren't, like footing or puenting, literally bridging. This has been going on so long that we get the Spanish alligator from the English alligator, which originally comes from the Spanish lagarto, which is a great example of languages chasing their tails and how they never stop evolving.
Get more from the Open University. Check out the links on screen now.